Look at that. We're smoking it out. Hey everyone, Digital David here. Today in this video, I'm excited to be checking out the ZOTAC MEK AI-Enhanced Gaming PC. Special thanks to ZOTAC for sponsoring today's video and sending us this sample. First things first, if you're interested in this computer or you want to find out more about it, the link to it will be in the video description. Here's a look at the package that it comes in. It's using the Atlas M1 mid-tower PC case, and the specs for this pre-built are as follows: 5090 GPU, 9800X3D4R CPU, 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM, 2 terabyte NVMe, and a 1300 watt power supply. Now let's go ahead, let's open this up and see what's inside. Here are all the contents. First up, we have our product literature, followed by our bag full of leftover modular cables and our main power cable in there. A couple of ASRock bags from the motherboard, RGB splitter cable there, temperature probe. We have a GPU bracket. We have a SATA cable here. It's gonna have two cables in the bag. One's gonna have a 90-degree end if you wanna use that one. The other one's gonna be flat on both sides. GPU power cable here if you want to use the power splitter, but we don't need that for our build, but they still include it. We have our Wi-Fi antenna and stand right here, as well as an extra keycap, which is pretty sweet. So that's going to be the accessories that you get. And then last but not least, the computer itself. Let's take a look at this pre-built in more detail. Starting with the top, we have a lot of ventilation here with our removable magnetic mesh cover. Magnets just snap right on. You can see with it removed all the venting we have here and our radiator mounts with the screws attached. Moving along to the front panel, we have about 90% tempered glass, and there is a plastic cover to remove, protecting it. And then at the bottom, we have some mesh venting here with two of our feet. You can get a feel for the gap between the feet if you were going to set this on carpet. There still should be some breathability with how tall the legs are. Underneath, we have our 4 feet here and another removable mesh screen. This one's not magnetic though, revealing our power supply fan down below, keeping everything nice and cool there. But that just snaps right back on as well. Looking at the back of the case, this is the top, this is the bottom. Here's our exhaust fan, Wi-Fi 7, 9 USB Type A ports, 2 Type C ports, 2.5 gig LAN, GPU, extra expansion slots, then our power supply down at the bottom with an on and off switch, and a 0 fan mode control, also on and off switch there, and our typical power plug. Taking cues from the front panel, we have tempered glass along the side, some venting down at the bottom, and a screen here that displays temperature. So CPU, GPU, and ambient temps. We have a Type A port and a Type C port for USB, combo mic jack. Now let's go ahead, let's pop this panel off. It's just this little tab at the top, and you just gently kind of pull it away. With the panel removed, take a look at this build. Everything is super clean. Count me impressed. Massive GPU. Love the 59 and the gold aesthetic that ZOTAC has on this particular model. 6 fans in here. 3 up at the top on the AIO have RGB on the blades. The other 3 have it along the sides. We do have a couple of plastic tabs to remove on those fans. Some extra protection. Same with the CPU cover. And I believe on the motherboard as well. So just take a look at your system and peel off the plastic as needed. But everything's prim, proper, and super tidy. Let's see if that holds true for the backside as well. With the panel on, you'll notice ventilation along the side for those fans. To remove this panel, we have 2 screws that we can undo, and then it'll just gently slide right out. And take a look at that. Super clean, very prim and proper here. Really nice design. We have extra expansion for 2 2.5-inch drives, 1 3.5-inch drive down here. You can see our 80 plus gold certified power supply, 1300 watts. That looks great. Super clean. And here's our first boot. Take a look at this. Really love the color scheme here. Those fans look really sleek and sharp. They perfectly accent and match our 5090 here, which is really spun up and revved up already. We got 1 fan moving. I believe that's due to the dual BIOS that it has right there, that little button. Our display's all set up, so we can cycle through different temps, and you can configure that via software too, and you can change it from Celsius to Fahrenheit. Same with the display for the CPU cooler, the RGB. Everything looks really, really nice. With the studio lights off, I wanted you to see the glow of the fans right here from the top and the fans on the side, and our GPU. Everything looks really nice, bright, vibrant, and it casts a good glow in this case. I mean, we also have to appreciate that GPU. So cool. It has that infinity mirror design, whatever you want to call it. That looks really nice. Super cool. Really a great looking GPU. All right, with our first boot up and running, let's take a look at a couple of key specs. First, looking for bloatware. There isn't any noticeable bloatware. There are a couple programs like for your GPU, as well as the motherboard, things like that that you would expect or would want to be able to fine tune or update or check performance. But other than that, it's just your typical Windows 11 software. So we can look right here, select all. So again, there's like an AMD software for the CPU. You'll see some maybe NVIDIA stuff for the GPU, like control panel and the NVIDIA app. Very, very basic. There's Zeuscast and then ZOTAC's Firestorm. So you have those to configure things like our displays. So very simple, straightforward. There's no added bloatware, which is awesome. And then looking at it right out of the box, of our 2 terabyte drive, we have 1.79 terabytes usable. We have some more specs about our system right here. So 1.86 terabytes of storage, 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM. We have the Ryzen 7 9800X3D for our CPU. And checking on the RAM down here in Task Manager, it is showing 6,400 mega transfers per second. So that's some really fast DDR5. And we didn't have to configure anything. Again, this is pre-built right out of the box. That was all set and ready to go. So let's take a second to look at some of the installed software. First up, we'll start with ASRock software. This is to manage the RGB, so you can customize that to your liking. So very simple software here, onboard LED, and then you have your components that sync as well. And all of that can be changed and configured right there. Zeuscast looks like this. From the home screen, we have a couple of key specs, and then we can adjust for each one the properties. So this is going to be our display down here. What do you want it to display? And do you want to set a temperature alarm? Then we have our CPU display. Do you want it to display CPU temps or fan speed? And do you want to set an alarm there? Then we have our settings. So do you want it in Celsius or Fahrenheit? All of that can be adjusted and tweaked as you see fit within that Zeuscast software. And last but definitely not least is ZOTAC's very own Firestorm software for our GPU. We're in the performance tab right now. You can see some specs in real time and adjust the clock voltage and limit. Multiple profiles to save and load. We'll go to the fan. So we have our fan speed options here, auto, manual, or curve. You can adjust those as needed, and they have nice visual indicators showing you fan 1, fan 2, and fan 3, so you know which ones they are. There's the profiles. Here's that dual BIOS switch. If you want to use the software to switch between quiet and amplified mode, you can do that. Now, keep in mind, if you click this, it will not change over until it's been restarted. We have our status here of everything, so you can learn more about the GPU, see its current temp. Everything really nice there, laid out very easy and clean to see. Then we have some more options here under the Spectra section, if you want to adjust certain parts and components of that to get the look and aesthetic how you want. And then we have our main app settings right there as well, so that's the Firestorm app. If you want to find out more about the pre-built specs, I have CPU-Z installed, so we can just look at a couple of these tabs to learn more about the CPU, the motherboard, and the GPU. Starting with the CPU, again, this is the AMD Ryzen 7 9800X3D. Feel free to pause your screen at any time if you want to look at some of this data. Then we have our motherboard right here from ASRock. It's the X870 Riptide Wi-Fi. Again, we got Wi-Fi 7. We have Gen 5 NVMe, and our X16 PCIe slot is also Gen 5 for those that are wondering with this board. We can look at the memory as well. 32 gigs of DDR5, but we have 2 extra slots, so we can expand that if we want. Here's SPD. Here's the graphics. And again, RTX 5090. We got the big boy in there, but that's a quick look at some of those specs for some of the key parts and components. Now diving into some numbers and tech specs, let's take a look at how the included 2TB NVMe drive performed. So looking at Crystal DiskMark, we got a score of 5,260 megabytes per second for our read speeds, and a score of 4,765 megabytes per second for our write speed. Looking at AS SSD, those scores are a little bit lower, but that's no surprise. Read speed comes in at 4,438 megabytes per second, and a write speed of 4,327 megabytes per second. So that shows me that these are Gen 4 speeds. So if you wanted to add a Gen 5 drive to get even faster performance, if that's going to be something that's crucial to you, you have that option with this board. Stressing out the PC with Cinebench R23 yielded the following scores. For multi-core, we got a score of 19,978, and for single-core score, we got a score of 2,048. So looking at the ranking right here for multi, we finish towards the top. And then looking at single core score, we finish at the top. But let's dive into this performance a little bit further. Looking at CPU Monkey, finding our CPU right here, the Ryzen 7 9800X 3D for multi-core, came in at 23,163. So they got substantially higher rating than we did. So with that being said, on their chart, this is competing with the likes of the 13600, the 3950X, the 5900X, the 12900 series, 12700K, the 9700X. So it's well within that range right there for those generations of CPUs, whether you're Team Blue or your Team Red. If we use the score that we got, it would fall right between the 7700 and the 7700X, a little bit further down on their chart. We're much closer to their score for single core results. So 2048 versus 2095. So we're just a little bit below what they have, but we'd be right here between the 7950X and the 7950X 3D. They're just a couple spots above that. Near the 12900 from Intel, the 14600, 13700 up at the top, 12900K down below, 7970X, 7600X down here, but a very respectable score in competition with a lot of great CPUs. Looking at this PC through the lens of Geekbench 6, we got a single core score of 3187 and a multi-core score of 17313. So, if you want to pause your screen, you can. Here's our system info. Here's a breakdown of the single core performance if you want to see that up close. And then here's a breakdown of the multi-core performance. Back to CPU Monkey, they clocked it right here at 18,221. We came in a little bit lower at 17,313. But with it here, it's duking it out with the 14700, the Intel Core Ultra 9 285, the 13900. It's above the Intel Ultra 5 235 or the Ultra 5 245K and the 13700K. So with our score, we would land right here in between the 13700K and the Intel Core Ultra 5 245K F variant. CPU Monkey has the single core score coming in right at 3,305, so that's duking it out with the 9900X, the 14900KS, the 9700F, and the 9600X, and the 14900K, and it's above the Ultra 9 285 and the Ultra 9 285K version. So for us with our score, we got a score of 3,187, so we're actually a little bit further down. So if we go find our score, we'd be right here above the 9600 and below the Ultra 7 265K with our score there. But a lot of really respectable CPUs in this scoreboard. Before we dive into gaming, let's talk about thermal performance. So currently we have the PC on and it's at an idle. Now it's been pretty warmed up today. It's been on for a couple hours, going in and out of some stressful benchmarking. So our idle temps might be a little bit higher than what you're seeing, and that's fine, not a big deal. But right now, again, everything's just calm. It's just powered on and hanging out. We're showing our AMD CPU coming in at 43, we can call it 44 degrees Celsius currently at 2728 watts. And our GPU, our 5090, just coming in at around 30 degrees Celsius and 25 watts. Now let's go ahead, let's stress this out to 100 for both the CPU and GPU. We'll see if it's stable, and we'll see how hot everything gets. All right, so it's been on for over 20 minutes. Things are holding steady. For our CPU, we're locked in at that 95 degrees Celsius. That's built-in protection for the CPU. And we're at 124 watts at 100% utilization. Looking at the GPU, we're still well within a healthy range here, 71.6 degrees Celsius. And that's right around our peak anyways. We peaked at 71.78. 585 watts flowing through there. 588 looks like our peak. And we're right at that 99% utilization for the GPU. So everything's nice and toasty, but well within acceptable ranges for the CPU and the GPU. So the case, the fans, the cooler, everything is working as it should be. But wait, there's more. I got the FLIR camera out so we could check the power cable and connector right here on our 5090. Right below 150, that 145-ish range. Pretty toasty, a lot hotter there. About 160. A couple more hot spots on the GPU. Ooh, saw 170, 175, that is toasty. You can see everything there. CPU, 120 on the cover. Take a look at the motherboard, closer to 130 there. But we got a lot of heat in this case right now that it's working on dissipating as everything's being stressed out. Let's have a little fun with our smoke machine so you can see a visualization of the airflow, especially with everything under that max load. We'll start the front right here, watch the smoke as it goes through. Then you'll see hopefully the GPU pull in that cool air, and then our fans up at the top for our radiator and out the back exhaust will remove the smoke. So take a look at that. It's going up and out. We'll move to the back side here. Really beam a bunch of that in there. So you can get a feel again for that airflow with that smoke. It's a lot of fun to press and use, but it's actually really cool to see how that's supposed to work right here. And if we put smoke on the front here, you'll notice how it's being pulled into the case, up, through, and then back out. It's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. How does this system stack up when playing popular games? We're also going to be taking a look at another ZOTAC pre-built. So they make multiple versions and variations of this. You can basically swap out the CPU and the GPU depending on the model that you get. So we'll be comparing this to their 5070 version with the AMD 7600X CPU, so you can get a better feel of price to performance with whatever way you want to go with your next PC. Where does that leave us with the ZOTAC pre-built? Well, let me share with you some final thoughts. Here's what you need to know. Build quality is great, attention to details top-notch, really great cable management, and they picked a nice assortment of parts and components. Again, there's multiple versions of this pre-built. This one's going to be one of their max specs with the latest and greatest 5090 GPU and a fantastic AMD CPU, the 9800X 3D. But with that being said, there's plenty of room to upgrade this in the future as well. 2 extra slots so we can put in some more DDR5 if we want. And with that AM5 CPU, as future versions are released on that platform, you'll have the option down the road if you want to keep everything else or to make any adjustments. You'll be able to do that from the CPU to the GPU to the RAM. You get the idea. They're also using common off-the-shelf parts and components, so nothing is out of reach to be able to upgrade in the future. So overall, count me impressed. Really nice, clean, high-performing pre-built PC.